Hello, Voices from the Bench community. I'm Don Bell, Vice President of Product Marketing with Ivoclar. If you are in the market for a new milling machine or one of our furnaces, I invite you to connect with one of our sales associates and explore the great deals and financing options now available. Our robust and dependable machines were designed to make your laboratory more efficient and profitable and are optimized for our IPS, e.max, and Prime Zirconia materials. Our PM7 also allows you to do digital dentures with our game-changing Ivotion puck. So give us a call or log into ivoclar.com. Wishing you much success as we close out 2024.
And always, Ivoclar, we appreciate your support. Welcome to Voices from the Bench, a dental laboratory podcast. Send us an email at info@voicesfromthebench.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Greetings and welcome to episode 341 of Voices from the Bench. My name is Elvis.
My name is Barbara.
Barbara. Why can you not catch a break?
I don't know. Do we really want to go there right now? Oh. So we're recording on a Sunday. So today is the celebration of life for Patrick. Yesterday was the funeral. My air broke, so my house is 85 degrees. And we're looking at maybe possibly, and I'm really scared to even say this, a direct hit from another effing hurricane that's going to go supposedly straight over Tampa. So we're talking about evacuating and what's going to happen with night dental and who stays, who goes. And it's just, like I said, I'm a little topped off emotionally right now, but I'm going to stay strong. I can do it because there's a lot of people in a lot worse shape. And I know we're going to talk about that next. But for all you people that know of hurricanes, just again, I'm going to ask that you pray for us because this one's a little scary.
It's weird to me because this is not the first time we've talked about hurricanes. And usually you're like, meh,
I know.
Whatever.
I know. I'm always like that. But this one's a little scary.
What makes this one different?
It's a direct hit. Normally they go off the coast and, you watch them a little bit, but it's never directly. They never come from the West Coast. This is coming from Mexico, making a beeline for Tampa. Normally it's down in the, by Cuba. And this is an anomaly, man. It's crazy.
Isn't there a chance it's going to move?
I hope so. We're praying it goes south. That's the only hope we've got is that it goes more south. But right now, man, nothing's changing. And normally the spaghetti models will change a little. And this one's just, it doesn't change. So I'm just, every night I go to bed, I'm like, please go south. Please go south. But I'll keep y'all posted.
When's it supposed to hit?
Wednesday.
And you're already here on Sunday. You're talking about leaving.
Yep. All right. So go for it. Let's tell everybody what's happening.
Last week, we talked about that last hurricane that luckily missed you.
Yep.
But it's worked its way all the way up to the Carolinas.
Yep.
Now, we mentioned that you had flooding at your other house, and I had high wind, but there's a whole area that had some massive flooding and a lot of power loss. Oh. And in those areas are some, obviously, dental labs.
Yep.
Our good friend Shawn Nowak and Nowak Dental Supplies, they started a simple GoFundMe for those interested in helping those labs during this difficult time. This is probably more crucial than ever because of what Barb might be going through here later this week.
Yeah.
Now, the web address for this GoFundMe is pretty long, so what we're going to do is put a link up on this episode show notes and also a link at voicesfromthebench.com/rebuild. It's really great what Shawn's doing.
Yeah.
Anything can help these labs. I heard about Drake Dental Lab allowing another lab to come in to use their facility, which I think is just
amazing.
So wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to need it even more here, apparently here next week. So I think it's good. So do what you can. Let's help those affected and let's get them back to making teeth.
Yep. Well said. And thank you, Shawn. You're unbelievable.
It's amazing what he does.
Yep.
Because he knows.
Yeah.
He lost
all
the Nowak Dental Supply during Katrina. I mean,
I know.
If there's somebody that knows the heartaches, it's him.
Yep.
So this week, we had the extreme pleasure to meet a dentist in Huntsville, Alabama that is doing some impressive work for the less fortunate population in his area. Dr. Ben Kellum is not your average dentist. He openly admits to not knowing what he was getting himself into when he decided to go to dental school. And in school, he got exposed to implants, and it really took off when he did his residency at a mission-based practice that specialized in treating drug rehab patients. Seeing some unused equipment, Dr. Kellum took it upon himself to learn the lab side of things so he could deliver better options at a lower cost. Now he and a partner own a practice doing all-on-X cases with photogrammetry and the whole bit for a fraction of the cost to those that need it the most. It's really inspiring on what he's doing with his talents. So join us as we chat with Dr. Ben Kellum. Voices from the Bench. The interview. So Barb and I are always happy to have dentists join our podcast. And when Blake Barksdale from Barksdale Dental Lab says to me, there's this guy you gotta get on the podcast. Well, by gone, we're going to make this happen. Dr. Ben Kellum, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How about y'all?
Oh, we're doing
Very
great.
good.
And with y'all, I imagine you're down there with Blake. And
We are. We're about 5 or 10 miles from them.
oh, no kidding. Wow, you guys are really close.
That's right.
Yeah. So, Dr. Kellum, we love to find out how people get into the industry. So, what brought you into being a dentist?
That's a great question. So I started, I had a family that was kind of medical background. I knew that I did not want to go the route of a medical doctor, saw the kind of grind that lifestyle
Yeah.
that can really wear someone out. And so I was looking for more of a lifestyle balance a little bit, wanted to help people, science was interesting to me, liked the hands-on component of dentistry. I had some family that I saw kind of that were in dentistry, and so that appealed to me. Honestly, looked at dental school, applied to dental school, did not do near enough shadowing of dentists to really even know what dentistry was going into dental school. I joke with people about going to school my first day at dental school, and my wife dropped me off like in kindergarten, like with lunch box out the front, and she was talking to me, trying to, you're going to do great, you're going to have a great day. And she said, at least you know how many teeth are. I said, well, I really don't know how many teeth there are. I think they're between like 20 and 40. And she's like, well, this is not encouraging me. You need to, I said, we're going to be there for 4 years. I feel like we're going to talk about how many teeth there are. I'm not really worried about getting that figured out.
Probably cover that on day one, I would hope. Yeah.
It's going to come up in the first couple of weeks, surely. So I really went to dental school not understanding what dentistry was, to be honest.
Don't you have to get into dentistry school and kind of talk about why you want to become a dentist? Is that not part of the process, or
of the application process? Yeah, I mean, so, well, I'll put it this way. I had a vision of what dentistry was going into dental school. And then you go into dental school and they teach you what dentistry is, which is not true either, right?
Yeah.
And then you go out and then every dentist you meet wants to tell you what they think dentistry is, but you really don't know, right? Until you get into it.
Yeah.
Lab's probably similar anyway, too, right? Which is you kind of get exposure to what this person feels like it is and what lab work looks like to them, but then you realize, I can make lab be whatever I want it to be.
Yeah.
And same with dentistry. This is what dentistry is like. You got to do, a lot of dentists want to tell you what dentistry has to be like, what it has to look like. And I think that I was just re-envisioning every iteration, before I went into dental school, while I was in dental school, when I first got out of dental school, and then kind of practicing more and more what dentistry is like. So I guess that's more what I mean by it.
Sure.
There was a complete idea of what I thought I'd be doing that changed about every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
totally different 2 or 3 years later. And then every 2 or 3 years, it seems to morph again. So that's been really interesting.
So which school did you go to?
I went to Oklahoma.
Okay.
I went to University of Oklahoma. And I'm from Mississippi, so I grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi. My wife was wanting to do a master's program. And Oklahoma had a good program, and I was like, as long as I can get in, you become a dentist at the end, right? I'm not out there. So and they actually have a really good program in Oklahoma that worked out well, and they also have a very economically friendly program compared to a lot of dental schools. So
Yeah.
that worked out really well. We moved to Oklahoma and Oklahoma City. I had a great experience there, really loved it. And then I went out to Idaho and did a 1 year residency there, and enjoyed that as well. Really, so I came out of dental school basically saying this implant dentistry thing is really fascinating to me. In dental school, they'll barely let you look at an implant in a glass jar. It's hard to get much exposure to it. Nothing critical. It's just I don't think really dental students really should be drilling into people's skulls much anyway. But
Yeah, I agree.
Let's let them take a weekend course first. I mean,
yeah, that's right. You need at least 16 hours of CE before you do that. So I went to residency trying to get implant exposure. Was still really interested in that. And in Birmingham, Alabama, there's a residency program that I was interested in, and they were actually looking for essentially a program director at the time. So I went into private practice for a few years at Affordable Dentures and kind of got to see.
Oh, sure,
that was my first real exposure to lab being so directly connected, on-site lab. And that was its own little learning curve and experience there. And then I transitioned out of private practice to basically running this 11 residency program that was primarily focused on implants and sedation, and did that for several years, and then have kind of transitioned to where I am now.
So talk about that program.
Yeah, so 11 dental residents and getting exposure to, it's a 1 year program, getting exposure to implant placement, restoration, IV sedation. So I joke about like 15 minutes before they start the residency program, they're asking faculty to come look at their crown prep, and then they transition to now seeing more than one patient every 8 hours. They transition to trying to get some independence, trying to kind of critical thinking, a lot of that stuff is really, you don't have somebody that's basically telling you what to do and how to do it. You're now starting to kind of critically think. I really loved the residency training and working with these brand new dentists. One thing that's I think is really sad about, I don't know, I'm curious about y'all's opinion on the lab side of the world, but like in dental, it's so isolating. You come out of dental school, you get in with the practice. If you're lucky, you're with somebody that's nice and wants to help you, but a lot of times you're not, or you're by yourself. We have a tendency to kind of isolate ourselves in silos. It's competitive. And so being in a room with every day with 12 dentists and like, what do you think about this? What are the ways I can manage this? Like having someone else that's on your team trying to help you out and help you navigate that first year of really processing things on your own was really fun to do. So I miss a lot of that.
I think it's super important. Here in Indiana, we have a VA residency. Every year, those doctors, they leave that residency so much better than when they started it because of the collaboration, being able to work on and see so many different types of patients, and they're not just doing hygiene checks all day.
Well, what is a residency anyways? Is that an extra year of school? Is it like, what is that considered for those that don't know?
Yeah, sure. So there's really different versions of that. There's traditional residencies that I would consider like specialties, right? So root canal, you get to be an endodontist or periodontist or oral surgeon. And so there's that category of residency programs, which I would consider kind of to be a separate animal. And then there are these additional general practice residencies, right? And so usually that's in the form of either an AGD or GPR. And the craziest thing to me about it is there's absolutely no real standardization of a program. And so when I was looking to go to different places, there'd be programs that didn't look at an implant, didn't place an implant, didn't restore an implant. Maybe they did ortho. Maybe there were a ton of cosmetic stuff. Maybe they did very little, just crown and bridge stuff that was basic and they just kind of existed. Maybe they were super advanced in what they were doing. It really was driven a lot by the patient population and kind of who was running it.
Yeah, the funding, really, yeah.
Yeah, and so the variability is kind of crazy. And so that's why a lot of people be like, well, is it valuable to go into these general practice residency programs or whatever? And I go, it just kind of depends on where you're going and what you want to get out of it and what experience you're looking for. But that's kind of the weirdest thing is seeing so many different programs and having such a a diverse experience out of each one of them.
You don't have to do a residency, right?
You don't. I think in New York it's required, which I actually think is a pretty
Yeah.
interesting idea. I think that's fairly recent. I can't speak a lot of that, but I
Sure.
think that they require it there. But everywhere else that I'm aware of, you're not required to do one. But man, it set the tone for my career and a lot of people's. And it can be a pretty neutral experience or negative for some people, but for me, it was hugely formative.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not required. It's more so there. I had probably 60 or 70 residents over the time I was program director.
Wow.
And which is a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I joke with people about, the president before and after photos when they go into office.
Yeah.
If I had before residency and after, I would look about 20 years older
Yeah.
during that time because it was kind of stressful in some respects. But I was really pleased having a lot of these residents come in. They are big thing is they're trying to figure out how to navigate with how they're going to interact with patients, how they're going to treat people, and they're looking to people to help them develop that, and how do you take care of a patient if you do something wrong or you don't get a good outcome, if they look to you and go, what do you do? And if you say, oh, it's fine, they'll get over it, then that kind of sets a vibe. And if you say, well, we need to do this right, or we need to have the hard conversations with our patients, then they can kind of pick up on that too. And so I really like that too. You have a chance a little bit at the very beginning of someone's career to at least like talk with them about different ways of handling hard situations. So
Yeah, and it sounds like it builds self-confidence as well. I wonder why it's not, like in New York. I wonder why states don't recommend it at the very least. Or maybe they do, and I just don't know it.
yeah, that's a good question. You come out of dental school, as depressing as it is, completely clueless.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then really the tone gets set, especially in that first year or two. And I mean, you're always learning a ton, right? And lab's the same way. Like you learn, you think you know something kind of, and then 5 years later, you look back and you're like, man, I had no idea.
Yeah, constant learning, sure.
Yeah, all the time. And that's that. I'll be retiring feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
But especially when you come out of dental school, the thing that I didn't realize, I think, is just there's so many different patients and personalities and also presentations of what they come in with and medical situations and complex. And so, especially at Affordable Dentures, I'd have all these consults every day, and every one of them, especially when I was starting out, was very complex to me. And then I'd walk into the next room, and if you're isolated or you feel like you don't have that community of dentists, then what do? You're looking at this thing, you don't know how to solve it. Who do you turn to, or what do you do to make sure you try to get a good outcome? And so I think a residency program is really beneficial in that respect. You take that first year, which can be kind of brutal, and you can still do complicated things, but you're having someone there that can help ideally give you a little bit of guidance on that. So.
Yeah, and you're building a network also, like you said. And when you go into practice, you can call somebody and say, hey, what do you do? It seems brilliant.
I have people sometimes be like, well, how did you learn certain skills? And I'm like, man, you'd be amazed at how much I just go and pester people.
Yeah.
I call people that I know that know way more than me. I've spent so many hours in labs talking with lab techs. One thing I learned at Affordable Dentures, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but lab techs don't feel like they can say this, but it's generally a lot of times the dentist's fault when you have a negative outcome. And I learned that pretty quickly.
I'm noting the time to take that clip out and make it a highlight.
No, for me, I'll speak for me.
Okay.
The data I gave was not where I needed it to be to get good outcomes.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, I'm not giving, I'm giving crappy impressions that have a bite that's not great without any photos and telling them a shade, and then wanting them to figure out the 99 other things that I didn't give them any information on. They really don't stand a fighting chance. And so figuring that out, I was like, okay, if I'm going to actually make stuff that's good, this lab thing's not going to be something that I can compartmentalize into a different world. Because if I do that, I'm going to be 50% as good as I can be. Because I just have this whole other world that's so important to my outcome that I don't know anything about. And so I spent so much time with lab techs that were fantastic that I said, I mean, I would go to lab techs and be like, I know nothing. And even if you think I know something, pretend I don't. And just tell me what, like, denture setup, tooth setup. I would go back there and kind of set teeth and talk with them about that, how to process dentures. I would process the different ways with them in the back, just trying to understand what was going on and getting, and then we'd have problems that would come up, and I started to get a better feel of, oh, this is why we're probably seeing that. And I just think it's crucially important.
So how did those technicians at Affordable react to you when you came to them being so open? I mean, honestly, it's what we want.
Yeah.
From a dentist, but at the same time,
it's shocking.
Yeah, it'd be a little weird.
Yeah. So I have no pride. I know that there's a whole barn of stuff I don't know. And so that's how I started the conversation with lab tech. I think if you come in and say, well, let me bring my big sheet of paper that says DDS on it and tell you how great I am. Okay, now tell me. I just said, hey, I really want to learn how to do this. You do a great job at what you're doing. Even sometimes when we're having issues, I'd say, I'm going to tell you the things I'm seeing. Can you tell me the things you're seeing? And let's see if we can figure out some core issues here. Yeah, they were very receptive. They were spectacularly good lab techs, and also were very interested in teaching. I don't think every lab tech or dentist is necessarily really interested in teaching people.
Or should be, yeah.
Yeah. And so they were both talented and a good teacher, which is two different things. And so they were willing to spend it. And I think that by coming in there, instead of coming in there on a high horse, trying to come in there as, hey, we're teammates, trying to like get across the finish line. What can we do to make this be less, you ask a lab tech to move a millimeter, the incisal edge a millimeter to the left on a full denture setup 5 times, then they're going to start.
Yeah.
Reset the whole thing. Yeah. So some of it was just survival of like, okay, listen, what can we do to make this more pleasant? But I was lucky, honestly, got lucky in having some really capable people that were willing to sit down with me. I mean, that's the thing that's crazy, I guess, is y'all want us to talk to you.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to talk to every dentist because we're kind of obnoxious sometimes, but y'all want ideally to get feedback, to get more information, to kind of communicate on, hey, we're missing some of this. Can you help me? Yeah. And we're wanting to get the outcomes. And you can spend about 10 minutes pointing fingers at each other, and then at the end of that, nothing's any better. Or you can have a conversation about like, hey, how do we get this where this lands consistently? And so me yelling at a lab does not get that result. What I see on the lab side is the lab talking about the dentist doesn't get that result either. And so we isolate ourselves from other dentists, but we also kind of isolate ourselves from the lab techs.
I mean, 100%. It's communication, and it doesn't always have to be a conversation. In this great world of texting, I mean, a lot of labs.
That's all I do. Yeah.
Almost the preferred method of communication, because I can go back to look at previous conversations. Photos are able to be sent. There's no reason that you have to make it an awkward conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And what generally I found is when I try to interact with a lab tech, or I really try to be consistent with different people. I find, it's hard in the lab world right now where there's so many. You may get one guy on the bench one day, you may get another guy the next day, and so forming that relationship is difficult, which is why I really like working as much as I can directly.
Sure.
We have kind of an in-house lab, which to me is one of the biggest advantages of an in-house lab. Is like I get to calibrate with that person or that group of people. But once you start kind of open that door of conversation, it just is so much easier to get a good result.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. And it's the patient that benefits. I mean, it's a win-win.
We have Barksdale lab here, and then we also have Oral Arts.
Yeah.
5 minutes from us. And so we have 2 pretty tremendously large labs, or pretty big labs, close. And I was talking to both of them at different times and just asking, how often do you get feedback or see the results of what you do? And they're like, unless it's bad, unless they don't like something, never,
One of the biggest sayings in labs is no word is good word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to hear anything because the only thing you're going to hear is someone saying, you messed up my bite or you messed up whatever. And so I think as someone that makes something, how can you know your feedback loop as a lab tech is the last part that's really important is cut off,
Mm.
because you see the data that comes in, you see what you make, and then the analysis part of how did it go for a lab tech is gone. Like, unless you're in an office or unless you're working with a dentist that does a good job at getting you feedback. So I find it really hard, or I feel sympathy for the lab tech position, especially in more of a larger lab where you're not connected to that outcome, because
Yeah.
it's really hard for you to know to kind of self improve and work on things when you don't ever get to see the end game of what you're doing.
Sure. I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, a lot of times with the larger labs, you're only talking to like a department head or a manager and not the actual person doing the work.
Yeah, exactly.
And I might be like feathering my cap here, but like I text all my clients, and I've come from a very big lab, and I'm always asking them, how did that case go? How did it seat? Were the contacts good? The aesthetics good? And I'm always seeking that because I feel like it makes us better. You've got to have that communication. So I think it does work both ways. You have dentists like yourself that go out and do that, and then you have some lab techs that do that here and there.
Yeah, and I'm sure that part of the reason you do that is because you're trying to get that feedback
Yeah.
and make those changes. And I think I can understand lab techs maybe being intimidated to make dentists frustrated or coming off as like questioning somebody. But I think there's an easy way to just say, hey, how'd that case go? I mean, if a lab tech asked me about that, I would try to include them as much in that process as possible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
When you were teaching the residents, what was the lab situation with that? Was that in-house or?
Yeah, that's really funny. So initially, we were 100% outsourced to
Yeah.
external labs, and then randomly in the clinic. So this residency is a Christian-based ministry, primarily working on drug recovery. So that's kind of
Oh,
some
wow.
background.
Okay,
A
yeah.
Wow,
lot of
really?
Yeah, so I'd probably say 50, 60% of our patients were going through some form of recovery
Wow.
at the time. So a lot of full arch, a lot of tooth replacement, a lot of denture work.
Sure.
And so in the clinic randomly at one point, because there was some company that supported, and there was a mill in Exocad.
Just sitting there.
It was there. Yeah, there had been an attempt kind of to have a lab there at one point, and it just for various reasons didn't. This was before I started
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Just
sure.
didn't kind of pan out. So there was just equipment there, and so there was a Amon Gerbach Motion 2
Wow.
and a Exocad dongle. And I didn't even
Nice.
know. I was like, "What is that black machine?" That's not Cyrec, you know what I'm saying? So that
Yeah.
was my level of kind of, I was not digital or techie by any stretch. I was kind of talking with the guy I worked with there, and I said, well, I'd be interested in kind of learning a little bit more about it. And so I had someone come and kind of show me how to design a tooth in Exocad and a couple other things. And I never saw it really as there wasn't a master plan. There was just kind of like, this is interesting. I'm curious what this can do.
Yeah.
And especially in a setting, we're in this like Christian nonprofit setting. It's like, there's no way we can use this technology. This is going to be too expensive.
Yeah.
That was the idea going in. And then I'm like, oh, wait, how much can I make a crown for in house? And so we start kind of transitioning to making I start on my patients doing some lab work. And of course, anyone that tells you when they start doing lab work that they get perfect good results is the one way I know they're lying. So a lot of my stuff was terrible. I have pictures of my first dentures that looked like garbage, and there's just a learning curve there. But then it started to kind of improve, and by a probably 2 or 3 years in, we were making 80% of the
Wow.
11, 12 dentists worth of stuff in house.
Wow. You actually started up the lab in the
Yeah.
residency. That's fascinating. So you're a lab tech also? Damn.
I am not accepted into the lab tech club. No, I want to be part of I'm a dentist that secretly likes the lab. The thing that was crazy to me, I hated lab in dental school. I hated everything about it. It was waxing crowns, setting teeth. The version of what I saw in dental school was so challenging. I'm not inherently like a artistic personality type. It's just that's not the way my brain is necessarily hardwired. So that was all really challenging for me. But this version of lab with this digital data capture and the ability to kind of control and manipulate things in a way that really helped us get different outcomes, it's almost a different profession.
Yeah.
It's so different, it's almost unrecognizable. Part of the reason I got into the lab originally was we have these patients, they come in. I'm a total sucker. Like, someone comes in, needs dental work, and can't afford it. I'm just like, you got to separate me from the patient because I'll give away the farm to the lights are off. And so someone come in and need 5 or 6 crowns, and to me, I do the math and I go, okay, it cost me $120 to buy the zirconia. And and I go, well, I can do this and I'll get them. And that was kind of how I started was, well, if I send it to the lab, it's going to be too expensive. But if I do this myself, I'm as free as, whatever. My cost is kind of set. And so I'm just going to make this for this patient. And then we started to see our lab bill go down. We started to see a lot of people were really getting interested, dentists getting interested in lab work. So residents were coming in and they were like, wanted to do it.
Yeah, I bet.
Hey, you teach me how to do more and more of this. And so that was really where we transitioned more and more into lab.
But you were milling dentures in that machine?
No, we were not milling dentures in that machine. I mean, we were primarily doing implant crown and bridge and then implant full arch. And then we started with the saga and the turmoil of printing dentures and that kind of over the last 10 years, like this is the miracle resin, this is the miracle resin, this is. And then we, to the credit of, I don't know if you're familiar with Axis Milling.
Yeah.
Yeah, they donated, and I will forever be grateful to them, donated a really large mill that allowed us to manufacture titanium bars and dentures.
Oh, wow. That's quite the nonprofit going on there.
Yeah, it's a very different, don't think of a normal community clinic. A majority of our patients getting some kind of implant treatment.
Wow.
A lot of them were getting fixed hybrid or some version of that. Being able to have that mill allowed us to really take another step in another direction. And so,
did you have lab techs come in and help you design those, or did you learn all of that?
Unfortunately, I really didn't. Have lab techs come and help. I had 11 relatively free lab techs of residents. So
yeah.
I had some manpower there, and then eventually I kind of trained some assistants up in the program, and they were able to help with a lot of the heavy lifting there. And I've had some very generous people that knew how to do a lot of this stuff that came and helped to, a lot of, or at least at the time, it felt like it was a little bit of the Wild West on a lot of the digital stuff.
Sure.
There wasn't a quick book for it. There's, especially the full arch stuff. It was a little bit of like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
And so there was a lot of that going on. And then like I said, got some assistants trained up a little bit. And it was a lot. I mean, it was kind of overwhelming at different times, obviously. And then a lot of stuff that, you look at now and it's that, you would do things differently. But the main thing we used was the residents themselves. Some of them, half of them probably were actually interested in learning how to do it. I did a lot of the design work. I've always been probably a better designer than I am the artistic side of it. And so I would kind of design the vast majority of it. And then it took the residents about 20 minutes before they were glazing better than I was. And so just punch a wall.
Yeah.
They were, a lot of them were very artistic. And same with the assistants. I'd train assistants and they would just jump right in and immediately be better than me at the artistic part. So.
But I love the fact that you're training that part of it and teaching them that lab work, because then it goes with, your philosophy that you wanted to learn lab work, and then the communication and the understanding. It sounds like you benefited quite a lot of dentists.
Well, I think that, speaking for myself, I think that when I started I talked about the lab tech missing a crucial part, which is seeing the finished product and kind of what happened there. As a dentist, if you miss that middle part of all of the data manipulation to design to manufacturing process, then you're missing a huge part. In my dentistry, my ability to create a good product improved so much when I incorporated that. I still design a majority of my cases because I'm having myself sit in front of photos or facial scans and critically analyze tooth positioning and stuff like that is affecting the outcome I have. So I don't know if I'll ever, even if I have a bajillion lab techs, I don't think I'll ever give that up just because it has been so beneficial for me learning how to plan and create good results.
And made you a better dentist, obviously.
Yeah, I think it made me a better dentist. It made me a mediocre lab tech and a better dentist. Yes. That's where I'm at currently.
So after the residency program, you said you moved on, you taught there for quite a while. And then how did you transition? You opened your own practice, obviously?
Well, so when I was at that residency program, one thing that interested me was the kind of interplay between this like ministry, underserved population treatment. And the way that a lot of that got done was kind of working with manufacturers and then doing some forms of education. That was kind of the model I got exposed to over quite a few years. And so I was interested in kind of doing my own thing, I was debating about just going into private practice, but there was an opportunity to kind of start what we're doing here, which is a Christian-based clinic that is doing kind of a similar scope of things. And I was like, I can always go into private practice. Let's try this thing. And so we've opened here in Huntsville. It is a ministry. Basically, the story I tell is about the guy that started this with me is Brian Correa. He's a dentist that went to dental school with me in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And we went in Oklahoma. We went to middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, and we were on these like externships to like treat people on mobile units or in small clinics, right? And
Yeah.
So we would go, and a person would come in, and we could give them like either a filling or an extraction. And they would come in, and they would have 28 teeth with the most complex things possible.
So you did learn how many teeth are in the mouth. Okay, good.
Oh, yeah, well, that's right. I learned that it was 40 or less, and that's gotten pretty far. I still have to count from canines over to count the teeth still, so that's never been my strong suit. But they came in, and they needed, this crazy amount of work, and just what a drop in the bucket. I'm not saying there's anything critical about programs like that, but it just feels hard when people need this massive amount of work. And you go, okay, well, I can pull whichever tooth. You have 14 infections. I can pull one of them.
Wow. Yeah.
I was talking to the guy who's my partner here now, and we were just like, wouldn't it be great? You're sitting and you have all these great ideas in your living room. Wouldn't it be great if you could get patients ideal treatment, even if they can't afford it? Wouldn't that be awesome? And then it's like, okay, great, let's move on. And that was, 10, 15 years ago. And then we have this opportunity to come here in Huntsville. And that's really like our mission statement is ideal treatment regardless of funds. That's what we shoot for. It's not what we get every time. That is like our driving force here. This is a ministry that every single person deserves to have ideal treatment.
Yeah.
And deserves to eat and smile and chew. Those are not privileges. Those are just things that you deserve as a human being.
Yeah.
Not be in pain.
Not be in pain, not be embarrassed, not, all the stuff, not say I can't go outside of my house because I'm so afraid that someone's going to see me or whatever. And so we started this clinic. We had a tremendous amount of support and equipment and supplies to kind of get going. We bought a building in the middle of COVID, or kind of beginning of COVID, and we just renovated. And when we first started, it was hilarious. We had so many people that knew what we were doing here, dentist, and they'd have patients that be like, hey, I have Susie Jones and she needs a lot of work. We'd be like, well, we're not open yet. And they'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
We kept hearing that. And so we had this big, like, year and a half long construction project, but we have like in our building, there's like a garage space, a large, think of like a hangar almost. It's like a big open space. And so it was a media production studio. So they had a huge room for like video.
Sure.
And so it was a green room, so it's neon green, but it's big. It's got a big bay door. And so we got a dental chair, and we got an implant motor, and then we had them place a CBCT basically in that hangar. And they were doing construction on the entire other part of the building, but we started seeing patients basically in this garage.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
So what would happen is the dentist would tell us about a patient. We'd tell the patient to come in, and we'd be setting up our mill or our printers or whatever. We had no sign. We had a construction dumpster in front of our door. So we would tell the patient on the phone, we'd say, all right, what you're going to do, you're going to go to this building. There's going to be a dumpster. You're going to park by the dumpster. You can go behind the dumpster and knock on the door, and someone's going to open the door and let you in. And then they would come into this garage. Well, of course, in the garage, we had like 4 mills and 10 printers. And, like once you came inside, it looked like a real place. But we had one patient call us and was like, there's no way you're a dental clinic. I'm not coming here. So that was the start. And we just started doing these full arch surgeries basically in this garage. I mean, it's because we just had so many people that needed the work. And that was 2 or 3 years ago. We built this nice clinic out. And now we have this lab lecture space, clinic space that we work out of. But that was kind of the starting point in the middle of COVID of people coming to banging on the door behind the dumpster to come inside and get their $50,000 worth of treatment in the in the garage.
So forgive me for asking this question, but if they don't have the funds for it, how do you make a living? Or how do you?
Great question. One of the most common questions we get. And so there's a couple of different ways. One is that we are not free. So we have a fee schedule that's probably 50 to 70% of a normal fee, I would guess, somewhere in there. Some of our funding is kind of a Robin Hood mentality, where we have patients that pay more of our reduced fee compared to normal, but it's still a fee, And then, so that's part of the funding. Part of it comes through making everything in-house. And then a lot of our initial equipment is donated or significant help. So think of you don't have to spend $200,000 on mills. You don't have to spend $100,000 on printers. And then makes life a lot simpler. And then a lot of it is just being very conscious. And then supplies. A lot of people are helping with cost on supplies, giving us breaks on cost on materials and stuff that we use. We use nice stuff. It's the same stuff I'd use on myself. We don't use any bargain bin stuff. We just have companies that see what we're trying to do and have been beneficial in helping us. And then we do education and training on the side. But the short version is, if you have a lot of those components, honestly, creating a lot of the stuff isn't necessarily as expensive as it has to be.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to diminish what people are charging for this. I totally think that that's reasonable and right for labs to charge what they charge and dentists to charge what they charge. It's not a criticism of that at all, but there's a lot that you can do to do it at a more reduced rate without sacrificing quality, and that's kind of our goal. And so we have in our area, probably half our patients are people who just need the treatment and can afford, maybe not full fee at a normal office, but can afford what we charge here. And then a lot of our another half or third or whatever our patients are people that are coming in that can't afford much, if any, towards treatment, but they're supplemented by those that can afford it. So we have a lot of patients. We have a mixture of kind of those combination of paying patients and then patients that can pay not a whole lot. And that kind of works to help fund what we're doing. So
gotcha. Thank you. Great answer.
Do you set the business up in a certain, I don't know if I'm asking this right, but tax bracket? So when people donate to you these large machines, it's a write-off for them? You know what I'm trying to say? Or
so
you're obviously not a nonprofit.
Well, so we initially were intending to structure things to nonprofit. This gets kind of in the weeds, but I'll do the short version.
Yeah, please.
The clinic is set up as a private entity. It's not a nonprofit. We have a nonprofit that we've just finalized that is going to be basically patients that come into our clinic and cannot afford can apply and seek funding out. And so people can donate to that nonprofit, and it will help basically cover materials and stuff and cost.
Nice.
For those procedures, Brian and I donate our time, and it covers kind of making sure that there's not a loss there, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so the donation, so I have to give credit to different companies. There's companies that just buy into what we're doing.
Wow.
And aren't necessarily interested as far as, so some of it's, I'd love to be altruistic. Some of it's education, right? We do some education. So people see us using the printers and the mills and the scanners and the whatever else and ask us and buy stuff, right? And so there's some incentive for companies to support us just in that respect.
Sure.
But A lot of it is just like, hey, y'all are doing good work and we can help you out in this way. I mean, once again, Access has been huge. Megagen's been a big component.
Nice.
Sprite been really,
Yeah.
and has not really asked a lot in return and has just bought into what we're doing. And so that has been huge for us in being able to accomplish a lot of this and get these patients the treatment they need.
That says a lot about our industry and those companies, honestly. I mean,
Oh yeah.
my brain instantly went to a tax write-off, but they're just doing it because they're good people.
Like I said, there's a lot of different reasonings you could put behind a lot of it, but a lot of the companies, I would say, that are participating here see what we're doing. We try to make it a situation where it's not completely like, I mean, some companies are just like, we'll donate and give stuff for free. But a lot of times we try to say, hey, can you meet us at cost? So that there's not as much, especially on consumables, because it's hard to just be like, hey, we're going to give you free stuff forever.
Yeah, sure.
So there's more of just like, hey, what can you do on cost to help us here and meet us? And companies are much more willing to do, especially that kind of stuff, because it's more long-term maintainable.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that kind of stuff really helps a lot. But I will give credit. I mean, there's just a lot of companies that have been willing to, hey, y'all are doing something that's helping a lot of people, and we're just along for the ride kind of thing. It's incredibly encouraging to me you can get really cynical, but it really lifts you up as far as just feeling like there's a lot of people that just want to do some good stuff out there.
Yeah.
So it's really encouraging to me.
Are these type of practices all over the U.S., do you know, or is it unique to you?
There's a certain recipe that's required, right? So you have to kind of know enough of the people in manufacturing to like do the initial thing, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so that's part of it. You have to know kind of how to do the procedures themselves. And then you have to be dumb enough to do it. And so the combination is a weird combination. I'm kind of like a dog chasing a tire. Like I don't have like a 20-year master plan. I really don't. But when we sit and talk in the back room about what we'd love to see, we'd love to create this other places, or at least kind of set a model that other people could do. Because this is Huntsville, Alabama is not the only place on earth that has people that need teeth.
No, for sure.
True.
And the reality is, and this is something we're not perfect on, but this is something that we tried to recognize early on, is there's going to be money on the table that we can get. And in order to do something like this, we have to some extent say, I realize that I could make more doing something else. Yeah. I'm happy with what I have.
Yeah.
And we're not poor, pitiful. This is not like we're monks in a monastery. I'm not trying to paint that picture.
Yeah.
But I am trying to say that in order to do something like that, to some extent, you have to say, I could use my skills elsewhere and maybe be more profitable and whatever else. But this is what my goal is. And so I know that there's going to be a little bit lost here, but I'm doing this thing that I want to be doing.
So how did you find another partner that was so like-minded? Because it sounds like you guys are quite the team.
Yeah, Ryan is, I joke about him that, so we were in dental school. He was from Utah, so he was out of state, I was out of state, and we were sitting next to each other the very first day of dental school because our last names are K. And so sitting next to each other. And
you leaned over and said, how many teeth are in the mouth? Sorry.
Hey, listen, buddy, I need to know how many teeth are in the mouth. Yeah, I talked to him. I said, hey, my name's Ben. He said, and he hates the story, which is why I'm telling it. He says, hey, my name's Brian. I like to work with leather. And I was like, okay, this guy's a weirdo. I'm going to turn the other direction and talk to the other person. But no, so we met literally the first day. He is as different from me as you can imagine. He is more type A. He's very organized, diligent, hardworking dude. I am like wandered off the street, laid back. I'm not a typical dental student in general.
Yeah.
And so that has worked well for our dynamic. And the reality is that we have the same end goal. And when you have that, and I give him a ton of credit for having humility and just I can be infuriating, and he is just like a marriage or something. He is willing to kind of meet, and he drives me crazy, I drive him crazy, and then we say, okay, but we need to figure this out, and we work it out and go on. But a lot of it comes down to just having the same vision. If you have the same vision, a lot of the stuff you can work out.
Sure.
Not many people would buy in to what's happening here. I've been very fortunate that he has been willing to buy in and be a part of what we're doing and, what we're doing together. So that's been really unique. And I give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
Well, dental school was a long time ago. How did you guys find your way back to, being partners? Was it?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. So I went private practice. He went private practice. He kind of went to private practice and then moved to different, he was kind of trying to find a good fit. I went to residency program and he was doing, fillings, grounds and all that. And then I was in this residency doing a bunch of weird stuff, these surgeries and whatever else. And so I'd send him pictures and he'd be like, oh man, I want to really get into that. And finally, I told him, hey, you either need to figure out how to do this stuff or you need to shut up. So, and so he actually ended up coming to the residency program while I was the director. He found an associate for his private practice and came and became a resident to learn how to do all this stuff.
Really? Wow.
And then while I was looking after the residency program, going back to private practice, and I was kind of looking at leaving the residency program, and we both were like, all right, well, we're both kind of in flux. Here's the window, do you want to pull the trigger on this? And to his credit, even though it was in hindsight probably real, not dumb, but just, it was crazy, was something we decided to do. And so, dead center of COVID, moving to a new place.
No doubt.
So he really jumped off the cliff with me, and we've been very fortunate so far.
That's a great story. Cool.
Yeah, it's been fun.
So we're coming up on like the last 10 minutes here, and I'd love to kind of dive into a little bit about how you do these full arch cases on a budget.
Sure.
What's the process?
So most of our patients come in, the trickiest thing for patients that are not, if you have someone that drives in the Bentley to come and get their full arch, they always come in with teeth, which nothing wrong. I'm just saying that population. Yep. You have people that come in that have existing teeth. Their teeth are generally in the right position for the most part-ish. Maybe they have a set of dentures, but those are – so we'll have people come in with completely collapsed verticals, every other tooth missing, no teeth at all. And so I would say that presents its own set of challenges. A lot of times we're doing a lot to try to capture and pre-plan based on getting them at a vertical that just does not exist or is really deviant from where it was initially. And so that's tricky. Generally kind of run them through photos, facial scanning, intraoral scan, CBCT, and we use Blue Sky a lot. So do a lot of, even if we don't guide it, we do a lot of pre-planning in there to kind of plan out surgeries, put them to sleep, do the surgeries. We generally deliver next day. Temporaries, we usually mill those, and then follow up with them for the next couple months. And we use photogrammetry for our capture, and so a lot of it's a lot easier. We're not doing conversions or anything like that.
You're definitely not doing this in the low-cost clinic type fashion. It sounds like, facial scanning, photogrammetry, all that is not cheap.
Yeah, and that's where I really get into, I do this the way I'd want it done on me. I do this the way, and once again, we've had companies like Micron Mapper has been real helped us with photogrammetry. Rayface, different companies have been really involved with helping us over time and allowed us to do this stuff. I can't imagine going back to analog on a lot of this full arch stuff just because of, it works great. It's not a criticism of how it's done. It's just there's so many, to me, pluses of the digital process. My patient comes in, I can really hone in a lot of the bite occlusion. If we have a fracture or something, which happens in the temporary phase, then I have the record. I can fine tune the bite a lot easier. Mm-hmm. If you do a conversion, the bite's a little off, you're looking at it and you're like, it's got a cant. You're like, it looks good to me. It's really hard to reinvent the wheel, do another pickup or whatever else.
Sure.
But if you have a digital process, you're like, it's not that expensive for me to do these corrections. It's not that time consuming for me to just really nail and knock stuff out of the park. And I think that's really been helpful. But yeah, we're doing it as close as I can to what I would want. I tell people, so people come into our clinic, patients, right? And so we tell them we're reduced fee. And so what's the thing you would assume if you were to reduce fee clinic?
Using cheap stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So the first thing you're going to assume is that you're getting the math doesn't add up. The math doesn't math, right? And so one of the things I tell them is I say, hey, we're just weird. We do things different. We have great support. I just out of the gate, I just want to but we didn't buy our stuff out of the back of a van. We have the same stuff I would use if it was my mom in the chair. We do the same processes as if you went to the nicest clinic in the U.S. And we just have a different setup than other people. Doesn't mean other people's is bad or good. This is just the way we do it. But you're going to get the outcome that you would get anywhere. And I think that's important because there's such a stigma, for example, of going I got to go to the free clinic or I got to go to the whatever. You walk in and you immediately feel less than, right? Yeah. And there's just, and so one of the biggest things when we were building this clinic is I was like, I want people to come in and immediately be able to tell that this is not, oh man, this is just a whole other thing that I have to sacrifice on because I can't afford to do something.
Yep.
We take them into our lab, which is a large space with lots of equipment. We talk to them about what we do. And I'd say most of our patients realize when they leave that they're getting something really high quality, leave consult. They feel that way. And that's our goal.
Yeah.
Does that upset the office down the road that is full price?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hope so. I hope not. And I'll tell you, I've thought about this a lot over the last 10 or 15 years. So one is that we're treating a large population of patients that are not going to come into your office and get a fixed surgery. Right? It's just
great.
They're not going to get full arch surgery. That's step one. Step two is that we are not antagonistic at all. We're not trying to say, oh, I can't believe they told you they were going to charge you that. So that's why I own up to this is just a weird place. We have different situations than other places. We have a whole different set of kind of guidelines of what we're doing here.
You're not running a commercial at 3 a.m. talking about how much cheaper you are?
No, we're not. And the other thing we do is we do a study club here. We have the dentist come in. We want people to come and see what we do.
Oh,
if
cool.
people are frustrated or have a concern, then come talk to us. People not knowing is the main reason they may get frustrated. And so we're just like, come in the door. You want to come see surgery? You want to come talk to us? If you want to send a case that you're doing in your own office and just want our 2 cents, great. We don't care. It comes back. That's why I feel so strongly about the dentist feeling so isolated is because we're trying to be like, hey, let's just all we're all just trying to get down the road here. Let's all try to work together on it. So part of what we've done is really try to reach out to the local dentist. It's not to say that some might be frustrated. I think if they really saw what we were doing and the general population we're seeing, I really think they would have a hard time staying frustrated with what we're doing. But people are going to get frustrated, and our goal is really to make sure that people that can't get treatment can, or that need the treatment can. And the great thing about Huntsville, it's not a super competitive market in the full arch space. Everybody's really busy here, and so there's just not a lot of people super interested in it, to be honest with you. So that's fortunate for us.
How many arches are you doing a week in this clinic?
Let's see. We started full blast on this clinic a year ago. So we've been open more than that, but the clinic was actually open. And we're probably doing 6 or 8 arches a week at least.
Wow.
That's fascinatingly awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the reason I bring up the timeline is people still don't know we exist, and we're starting to get patients from far. So we're starting to get Southeast region, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee. We're kind of near a lot of places. We have some from Louisiana. And so part of what we're trying to do is just raise awareness as a resource. Dentist, what I'd say is every dentist has about 5 patients that come in once a year that really need big work and that they want to get taken care of. They just can't really do it in their office. And so we're trying to really become a place for dentists that go, hey, I love Susie Jones. She comes in here all the time. And she really, I've been adding a tooth on her partial every year for 7 years. And she really needs this work. She can't afford it. And I love her to death. Hey, do you mind seeing her? And so it really, you can view it as antagonistic, or you can view it as we're a resource for these people to help get patients they love treated.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's more what we try to do. Not that we're always successful, but that's kind of our goal.
Well, it sounds like you're doing good work.
We're trying.
And I love that you're serving that population, but you're not doing it on the cheap.
Agree.
And it's really cool what you're doing, Dr. Kellum. And thank you so much for coming
Thank
on
you.
and sharing with us this story.
Well, I really appreciate y'all having. Enjoyed talking with y'all.
Yeah, thank you so
awesome.
much. I kind of hope other people kind of hear this and kind of go their own route with it, and more of these clinics open up.
Me too.
Yeah, and good luck to you and your partner. It's awesome. Congratulations.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome, Sarah. Well, thanks again, and hopefully we'll meet someday.
Yeah.
That's right. I hope I get to meet you in person. I really appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You too. Huh?
A huge thanks to Dr. Ben Kellum for coming on our podcast and telling us all about your amazing story. I know. We love what you're doing. I know Elvis and I both feel the same way. We think it's amazing that you're able to help those that can't usually afford the larger treatment without compromising on quality. You named a bunch of companies that are helping you and your partner with your mission, but I'm sure there are many more that you didn't mention. We want to also thank them and recognize again how amazing this dental industry is, no doubt about that. We can only hope that other dentists can be inspired and set up similar practices in other parts of the world. Many of these people, guys, many people deserve much more than just an extraction. So thank you, doctor.
It's good work he's doing. I hope it spreads across the country.
Right on.
Well, that's all we got for you. Barb, I don't know what to say. Stay safe.
I know.
Get the hell out of there.
If they knock out the power for 2 weeks, you might not hear from me. So I'll see you on the other side.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right,
Everyone else,
buddy.
we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, guys.
Bye.
Have a good one. Needless to say, I am not a happy girl.
The views and opinions expressed on the Voices from the Bench podcast are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the host or Voices from the Bench, LLC.